Hi, Ellie. Thank you so much for joining us today on this interview.
Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's take some time to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your sport and who you are and a little background.
Okay, so I am a senior right now. I am in the class of 2023 and I play soccer at James Madison University. I'll be playing for one more semester in the fall because I'll be taking my fifth year. And yeah, I've been playing soccer my entire life. It's been a really great experience. It's taught me a lot about myself and a lot about how to, just be with my teammates. And yeah, I've learned a lot. So I'm excited to talk to you about my experiences and hear what you have to say.
Awesome, great. I played soccer too, so I understand how that affects your life and your lifestyle. So it'll be interesting to relate. So this interview is specifically about seasonal transitions and how that's affected you being in the off season versus in season, and just different ways that affected your mental health and your personal perspective of that. So if you want to dive in a little bit what your perspective of that is, we'd love to hear.
So I guess I'll just start with in season. I think obviously in season, there's a lot more anxiety about performing and, being the best you can be. Because obviously you want to be on the field. And with that comes a lot of stress and tension sometimes between, teammates and who's going to play and who's going to start. And it's easy to lose focus on the goal because you're so focused on, how am I playing? How do the coaches think I'm playing? How do my teammates think I'm playing? So there's definitely a level of performance anxiety in the fall that you don't have in the spring season. Even though we do play games in the spring, obviously it's not regular season. So you approach it a little bit differently. I think another big thing is actually academically because, you're constantly missing classes if you go away on a Thursday for a Thursday night game and then you stay out until Sunday because you have another game on the road. You've missed 2 days of classes, you get back late on Sunday, and you wake up, early Monday and have to start again and from a point where you kind of fell behind. Whereas in the spring, you never miss any school for soccer. And I think depending on, your major, the classes you're taking, the teachers you have, it can be really difficult to navigate that, especially when you're freshman, sophomore, and you're still getting used to it. I think obviously as you get older, once you become a senior, a junior, upperclassman, you kind of begin to understand how to make it work and how to reduce the stress that comes with, balancing school and athletics. But at the beginning, it can be very challenging.
Yeah, I know balance is probably a big thing during the in season. And I'm sure during the off season, that transition of, that lack of having to balance it is even confusing in itself because you're almost missing that piece of it. That's definitely a key difference that I think of when I think of in season versus off season. And how would you say the off season affects your mental health? Do you think you struggle with anything like, lack of belonging, missing that, that big purpose in your life when you're not playing soccer because it's such a big part of your identity or anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. So I actually thought about this question a little bit, and that was immediately what popped into my head is how I don't want to call it necessarily an identity crisis, but in the spring, the ratio of soccer and, working out compared to the fall slash, how much time you're dedicating to film sessions, treatment, all the stuff that you have to do when you're in season. Um, it gets really overwhelming, but at the same time, you adapt to that. So once spring comes around and you only have, your normal course load and you're only playing at maximum for the beginning, 8 hours a week, it gets really hard trying to figure out like, who am I outside of the sport and how do I occupy this time doing other things, or how do I just occupy this time doing nothing and being okay with that? I think that's really hard for a lot of athletes because we're taught, go, 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 go. And rarely do we slow down. So once we get that little break in the spring, it feels very uncomfortable. And we're kind of forced to deal with that, which is definitely important because it makes you grow, but it's also a difficult situation to be in. Similarly, you kind of just get the opposite of performance anxiety. You get this anxiety that you don't have something to focus on now, but it's in the future. It's so far away. Like, am I doing enough? Am I working out enough? How am I putting myself ahead so that in 6 months' time, I am the best player I can be and I can contribute to my team in the most, important and effective way? Sometimes that can be really challenging because there's a lack of motivation too. when you're lifting and running and doing all of the above, to not play in games. I think some athletes struggle with that, especially too, because you aren't motivated by, okay, I'm going to do really great in practice this whole week and I'm going to start in the game on Sunday. Now it's like you have to be motivated to make yourself better in the long run. And it's not, short-term goal that's fulfilled, within the week. Like, okay, I played really good this week in practice. I'm going to kill my game on Sunday. I'm going to be so good. Versus now it's kind of motivating. You have to stay motivated and disciplined to get better for your season. That's a few months away.
I know you mentioned you played soccer your entire life too. Do you recall any of these struggles being similar when you were playing more in youth soccer as well, aside from just college?
Not as much, I wouldn't say. I think there's an element of, collegiate athletics that is definitely more competitive and there's more pressure to perform based on how the whole system works. And you are there to play and you got that spot on the team to play versus in club, you might be there because you're developing. You might not play college. Like there's not that stress of, okay, I have to win this game. I mean, obviously everyone wants to win if that's your mindset. Like you want to be a competitive player, but I feel like it's not as focused on. And we do a lot of like development and, a lot of tactical stuff in college, but, it's very different. And I'd also say in terms of school, you never really you maybe missed a Friday. And in high school, they gave you, you can have 7 absences, 10 absences, whatever it be. And a lot of professors say if you have more than 2 absences, you have a lower letter grade, or if you have 5 absences, you fail my class. So I think that's really stressful because professors make their own course rules and expectations, whereas in high school, that number of absences is set by the district and you have an idea of what it will be. And also, you're not picking your classes. So that's also a little bit different. So no, I would say that the struggle in college is definitely elevated as opposed to how it was in high school, just because of the way that it all kind of works.
Right. Would you say that the feelings can be similar? For example, if it's like you're a high school athlete and you have your season and then the same idea of in season versus off season where you have this huge part of your identity and then all of a sudden you don't have it, and that transition back and forth year to year just, it takes a toll on your mental health.
I can't really speak on this personally just because as a soccer player, I never really had to deal with that. Most sports, basketball is winter, lacrosse is spring. We play fall and spring competitive seasons, so it tends to become more of a year-round sport, whereas, football is strictly in the fall. So I'm sure there is struggles with that. I just have never personally faced them because I think that, we would go up until the very end, till like November. December, you would still be training. You would do small group training, have a few like little organized practices. And then once it hit, I believe like mid-January, you were back again doing the same thing until June. And then we even had tournaments in the summer. So, nationals. Summer was nice to have off, but I think like at that point, you've been playing so much out of the year that it was embedded in you at that point. You didn't really have that identity crisis as much. It was kind of like, I'm okay to just relax a little bit with this time.
Or it was nonstop, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any fears for the future, maybe when you stop playing soccer because of that, or how that might affect your identity and kind of, the off season being compared to once that sport is transitioned out of your life?
Yeah, so I definitely think that that's going to be something interesting that I will have to face when I do stop playing soccer, because you have that mindset and you have the schedule, you have everything planned out for you. And then the second you graduate or the second you're done playing soccer or a sport, that all stops. And that becomes the time that you really have to figure out, like, without this sport, who am I and how can I fulfill myself without someone else giving me things that will fulfill my day or make me enjoy my time in a non-competitive environment.
I definitely agree with your points of the off season being like, an identity crisis type thing and the different types of motivation. I think that those are big key things that athletes have to deal with when dealing with the in season versus the off season. So I think those were some great points that you made. Do you feel like you have methods of coping when you are in the off season and struggling with those, that type of motivation, or is it kind of like a distant thought that just exists for you?
I mean, I would call it is a distant thought. I definitely haven't really opened that as much as I probably should. I would say that I do like to go on walks. I find that to be fun, but we do still have a decent amount of team things going on. So it isn't hard to occupy that time. And I think that you also focus a lot more on school. Like I tend to pour myself more into school and into, on the weekends, like maybe instead of working out or going on an extra run, you're going to go hike or go enjoy an activity that you um, try out because during the week you have soccer.
Do you feel like you're supported by your coaches in any instance where the seasonal transition? Do you think that coaches provide adequate support in any situation?
Yeah, our coaches are really great about that stuff. They definitely support mental health and understand that being an athlete at any phase of life isn't easy. So I'm definitely grateful for that. And, James Madison as a university has a lot of really useful resources for student athletes and just students in general, that if you're going through something or experiencing something like that, you always have people to talk to. So yeah, I would say my experience has been really great with that.
Awesome. That's great to hear, especially from an organization like ourselves. We want to hear that coaches and players are being uplifted and supporting each other with the importance of mental health. So that's really important and great to hear. Lastly, just to summarize our points here with this interview, maybe you could just list off those key things, those key differences and feelings that you see in the in season versus the off season, just like you were saying, like off season identity struggles and things like that, and just in summary, what would you say are those key differences?
Yeah. Okay. So overall, I would say, in season, it would be performance anxiety, um, balance between school soccer and then also, social life, because there is that element of connecting with people that keeps you sane. Also, something that I didn't mention before, I'd also say is dealing with injuries and pain during season is definitely very difficult. Um, and then in the off season, it would center around mostly like, again, identity crisis, trying to fill that time, trying to find the motivation for your why and like how to make the most out of a season that isn't filled with games and how to enjoy like going through the journey of getting back to season versus, being just excited to get to season. You want to enjoy the entire thing because I think that makes it a lot more memorable. And then you're living in the present, getting better every day versus just focusing on something that's too far away.
Well, thank you so much. And last thing is that it's just overall a very challenging transition for athletes. That is something that sometimes goes unspoken about. I appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. But thank you so much,
All right,
Ellie. It's
perfect.
really awesome.
No, thank you, Kaylee. I appreciate it. I had a great time. Thank you.